You're watching the special report. Tonight we're discussing the future of academy football. Still with me in the studio, Tony Carr from West Ham, Watford Head of Youth Nick Cox, and Crystal Palace Co-Chairman Steve Parish. Going to get more from the guys shortly, but first, Carve Solicol's been at the Royal Ballet School to find out what football can learn from the arts.
2, down, lift, front, back, plie, down, and devant.
It was the 70s reactionary sitcom character Alf Garnett who described football as working-class ballet. 40 years later, Premier League clubs like Chelsea and Aston Villa have turned to the Royal Ballet School in London for advice on how to develop their academies.
Both organisations have been interested in a number of things that we're doing, particularly how we blend our academic study time with technical training. And the balance of that time and how we weave all that together.
Pupils at the Royal Ballet School receive 10,000 hours tuition during their development, 3 times as much as a young English footballer.
There's tens of thousands of youngsters who enjoy and love playing football, and I'm sure with the right development and the right training, we could get more Rooneys, more Beckhams.
When the training really kicks in, you forget all the distractions, and being surrounded by people your age that are interested and have the same passion as you it's a good motivation. So yeah, from my experience, it's really been beneficial.
The boarding school model works at a world-class institution like the Royal Ballet School, but should we be forcing our best young players to leave home at 12? And would they want to anyway?
I'd do it to follow my dream, but to be honest, I want to play for Torquay. I mean, Torquay's got me here. I wouldn't want to just abandon them, because Torquay's got me where I am at the minute. But so I wouldn't want to just be creamed off to the higher teams. I'd want to stay here.
Dario Gradi knows everything there is to know about developing talent. At Crewe, he's brought through hundreds of players, and he's worried about putting 11-year-olds into residential academies.
The Premier League, they're looking at Barcelona and clubs like that and saying, they want to have their boys in full time. That's fraught with problems. You start bringing in 14-year-old boys full time. Do you take them away from home? You've got a big obligation.
And turn, rond de jambe, soutenu, fendu.
The elite player performance plan means in future young footballers and young ballet dancers will be learning in similar, focused, intensive environments.
31.
Maybe that's no bad thing. In the past 5 years, every single one of the Royal Ballet School's graduates has joined a professional company.
Going to sit that towel back, try and keep lifted high on that supporting side.
Let's get the thoughts of the panel on what they just saw there, and more, of course, about this debate of academy football and the benefits of it. Nick, to you first of all, because more face time with players is one of the changes that's going to happen. Obviously, the benefits of that are clear for all to see. How needed is it?
I think it's essential. In order to develop the best players that you possibly can, you need to spend as much time as you can with those players. It means that you don't have to cut corners. At the moment, a lot of clubs work just in the evenings, and sometimes they're a little bit rushed, and they can't always deliver all the things they need to deliver in the time that they have with the players. So by being inventive and combining football with education, clubs are going to spend a lot more time with their players, and I think that everyone would agree that's a positive move.
Watford obviously worked with Harefield Academy very, very closely. Tell us how successful that is.
Yeah, it's been worked really well for us. We're 5 years into the project now, working with the Harefield Academy. We have, or initially we took 40 boys and put them into that school. And what that allowed us to do was obviously spend more time with them on the football pitch, but it also means that we can spend more time with them in the classroom. So the boys aren't making sacrifices. They're not developing as footballers at the expense of education. There is a large dropout rate. There's a lot of boys that will be in these systems that don't become footballers. So it is important to us that we educate the boys, as well as giving them a really good chance of becoming a footballer at the end of it as well.
What the changes could mean, Steve, of course, is that children may well end up living hundreds of miles from home. Practically, that's going to be difficult, isn't it?
I think that's true. I mean, we've got a duty of care to these boys that we look after. As has just been said, we've got a tie with the Oasis Academy, and all of these things do help. And I think taking a 13-year-old child, maybe 100 miles from the parents, and putting them in a kind of battery hen environment where they're with hundreds of other would-be professional footballers is not necessarily the best thing for them. Our problem, we think that's a big impediment to this actually working for the big sides. Our problem is that within this rule they can also take them for very little money at 16, and obviously at 16 it's a lot easier for young adults then by that time, and a lot easier for people to be mobile.
Also, there's a danger that agents are going to get involved with kids at a very young age, is there not, Tony?
I think they're there already. I think most
how
most
much
talent.
are they there already?
Well, I think most of what you would call your better players within each age group won't necessarily have an agent per se, but they'll have someone who's advising them or advising their parents. So the older they get, the more difficult it gets in terms of the demands they make sometimes. So I think that's the nature of the beast, if you like. That we have to deal with that, and we do deal with that. But I think under this system, where it may make it easier for boys to move from club to club, will make it will make the agent perhaps we'll see more of that agent influence with the young players, and maybe they will be influencing them to move for the wrong reasons.
I think it's a charter for agents. If an agent can tout a boy around at a fixed amount of money, they'll try and create bidding wars so that they can generate more money. There's so many bad practices that I've seen in the short time that we've been involved in the game that go on with agents now. This really does give them hands on the crown jewels and says to them, here's the kids, here's the price that you can sell them at, get on with it.
I think as well, added to that, we'll probably see an increase in wages for young English players, because there will be a bidding war. If there's more than one club interested in a player, the negotiation will be directly between the club and the player and his family. So wages could increase, and I'm not so sure that superstar treatment for young players is always best for their development.
No, I think many would probably agree with that. Do the FA perhaps need to be legislating, Steve, against the involvement of agents at a particular age? Could they come in and say, well, we need to be looking after them to this degree?
Well, they do legislate, to be fair to them. They just don't enforce it. I think that is very difficult. It's very difficult to say that in fact, it's probably one thing, perversely, that I actually disagree with. I think that young players are quite entitled to be represented. Why should a young player not be represented, but an older player can be? We don't want to entice kids to do things that they don't want to do. We don't want to chase them around a training ground trying to get them to sign contracts. We want them to be properly advised. As Tony said, we want our academy to be the best place for them. What we don't want is all the dice loaded against us, which is what this plan currently does.
Are the academy changes, Tony, going to see the gap between Premier League and Football League clubs really expand?
Not necessarily. I think that's the fear, but I think the key to it always, one, to have a good recruitment system, and obviously try to attract the best players in your club at the bottom end, and then with it, once they're in your system, to sort of create the environment and to create the atmosphere and the right people and the right coaches to make sure that the kids don't want to go. I think the bottom line is the kid has got a right, the player has got a right to move on if he wants to. I don't think anyone's got any argument about that. At the end of his time or his contract with the club, he has the right to go. But what you try to do is create the environment he doesn't want to go, no matter who is enticing him. Although that may become more difficult, but I think that's what we've got to try to work towards.
Is it better, as a coach, Emma, Steve, you'll probably be at the best place to answer this, to have a steady stream of income as well, rather than peaks and troughs?
Again, I'm not.
Which is what's being proposed.
Our academy isn't, a cash cow for us. That's not how we look at it. We don't think, we'll create players for Manchester United and Chelsea and Arsenal. That's what we're here for. We're here to create players for Crystal Palace, so that Crystal Palace can be competitive in the league that we're in, try and get to the next level, so that our fans that come to our games can enjoy what they see, can take satisfaction out of a cup run or a promotion. And an academy is how we do that. And I always believe that football clubs should somehow represent the community that they were in, and there should be some semblance of a backbone of that team that has something to do with that community. And I just don't see how this works towards any of that.
If you could change one thing, you're all looking at me.